Assalamu alaikum. I received a question from my young brother over Facebook, Ahmed, and it goes, "Hello, Mr. Mohamed Ghilan. This is my short story. I'm a born Egyptian Muslim teen who came across these big questions of life at the age of around 14. I was doing umrah back then when I asked myself this one question of why I am a Muslim. This question haunted me down and still is after 4 years. I started doing my research and I came across a lot of different arguments here and there, the Quranic miracles, etc., etc. And God knows best how much time I spent in the last 4 years of my life searching for an answer for this one question. The thing that I was looking for was obviously proof. Proof that God exists and proof that Islam is the one true religion. But it wasn't as easy as it sounds like. I heard debates until I knew all the arguments an atheist and a theist would ever make by heart. It was then, where the religion and science era started, the ones who believe the Quran has every scientific discovery or theory as a hidden meaning to the ones who try to refute these claims. This was the longest part I spent time on, as I thought this is the only way I could prove my religion as the true one. But I don't really regret any of that. I still learned quite a lot, and the most important thing I learned was my sincerity. I stopped trying to defend something I didn't even choose and was sincerely searching for the truth, if there is any. Some time ago, I came across the argument of the Quran being eternal and static, while science being changing over time, which made the Quran science hypothesis a contradictory one, which was quite a relief, honestly. I'm in college now, and therefore don't have much time in this kind of research, but I'm glad I found your page as someone who is interested in the same field of questions. There are still a lot of questions I'm searching for, not quite sure if there are any answers to them. One of which is which criteria one has to use to judge the religion on truth and accuracy. How does Islam itself want us to believe? With what kind of logic and reasoning? What is the difference between blind faith and the belief in the unseen? As of my position now, I would call myself a Muslim agnostic. I know it sounds weird, but I'm Muslim because it is what makes most sense to me right now, and agnostic because I don't claim I can prove neither a God nor a religion, and I am in a position where I would gladly change my beliefs and views as a sincere person to whatever makes most sense. I hope I didn't waste a lot of your time. Keep up the good work and stay safe. Well, mashallah, Ahmed, thanks for connecting. You are not unique. A lot of young Muslims in your shoes are actually thinking the same thing. And the questions that they face, unfortunately, a lot of times they don't find answers to. You happen to choose to stay a Muslim, and I actually commend you for the position that you take, which is to remain quote-unquote agnostic in the sense that you don't necessarily not believe, it makes sense to you, but you state that you would change your position if something that makes more sense comes across to you. Imam Al-Ghazali had this crisis of faith. If you read Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal is the Arabic title of it. The English title is Deliverance from Error. It's a short book. It's an autobiography of Imam Al-Ghazali. And Imam Al-Ghazali, during the height of his career, when he was basically the equivalent to today would be like the dean of the whole university in the Nizamiya in Baghdad. He was the most sought after scholar when he held classes. I remember reading something like 300 turbans and would sit in his class. And when we say turbans at the time, it meant these were 300 major scholars would attend his lectures. And so he was not, he was somebody that was really intelligent, an intellectual, a leading scholar, someone sought after. And he started asking himself some questions. Why am I a Muslim? He reflected on why are people Muslim or Christian or Jewish or Zoroastrians, and he noted very valid observations that for the most part, most people follow the religion that they follow simply because they happen to be born into that. They're raised and brought up in that. And so that brings up the question of, well, that's not really a way to say that it's the truth. How do you know the truth? And he states in his Deliverance from Error that he has sought after different fields. He looked into the arguments of all the different sects and groups. He looked into the philosophers. He basically did what you were trying to do. And ultimately, he mastered all of their fields. He wrote in their particular disciplines. He proved himself to be someone who understood how each sect reasoned through things. But there was one group that he came across. He read their books. He comprehended at an intellectual level what they had to say, but there was something missing about them, which was the action part. He calls them the Sufis. He said, the Sufis, I've read their books, I've understood their arguments, but this is the one group that for me to really comprehend what they were talking about, I had to go out on a journey. And I had to partake in the path, because their books were not intellectual prescriptions. Their books and their treatises were transformational prescriptions. They were medicines for the soul, not medicines for the intellect. You need to understand something when it comes to philosophy. The way you make a name for yourself in philosophy is by pointing a hole in the argument of someone else, some major figure, and write a book about it, and then you'll get a faculty position somewhere, and you'll become a world-renowned philosopher. That's really how you make yourself a name in philosophy. Look at the history of the greats in philosophical thought, and even today, the ones that we know about, we only know about them because they've pointed a flaw in some argument and just came up to try to fill that flaw. And then someone comes after them, either a contemporary or after they pass on, who points out a flaw in their argument and then proposes something different. And if you look at the history of thought, you'll find that mankind generally has been moving around in circles. The particulars change, but the premises, the general paradigms, we just move in circles around each other. Now, there was one thing that you said here with regards to the proof of God and whatnot. You mentioned, and God knows best how much time I spent in the last 4 years of my life searching for an answer for this one question. This is not simply a matter of rhetoric that you just got used to saying that, so you just say it. Even if you look at materialist philosophers that try to argue for things like there is no such thing as consciousness, there is no such thing as a soul, even those guys, even if they were born as in an atheist family and brought up as atheists from the year dot, they even say that this is an unnatural thing for them. They have to tell themselves and remind themselves, cognitively speaking, that that is just an illusion. But the thing is, how do you know it's an illusion? Are you just making statements now? You're just saying stuff to say it's an illusion? I mean, the word kufr, and I don't want to use it in the sense that we're issuing judgments here, but kufr, just in Arabic linguistic terms, kufr literally means to cover over. To take a kafir in Arabic is also someone who's a farmer, because a farmer takes seeds and plants them and hides them into the dirt. So kufr is to take something that's manifest, that's apparent, that's in your face, and to cover it over. Now what I would, and I'm not trying to give you answers here, Ahmed. This is not the purpose of this. I would rather you think a little bit deeply about the statements that you make and the convictions that you have or don't have and the beliefs and all that stuff, and really reflect on the method that you're thinking as well. Because it's in the method of thought, the paradigm of thought that you're using, that you'll find a lot of answers. Imam Al-Ghazali, when he looked at the Sufis, he thought that, okay, well, for me to really get what they're talking about, I have to go and do it. In the sense that, and he argues for that actually, he mentions that when you look at different endeavors, I mean, you're in college right now. I'm not sure what you're studying, you didn't mention that, but let's just, for argument's sake, say that you're studying, medicine, okay. So you're studying medicine. That is a field of knowledge that has been open to you. Now, when it comes to other fields of knowledge, you may not have that inclination towards them. It doesn't say anything about your level of intellect necessarily. It just says that maybe you just don't have that intellectual inclination towards that field. I've said before about myself, I'm not really into chemistry. I'm not really into physics. It's just not my, I mean, I could do it, but it takes a lot of effort from me. And there is a point where I just can't progress any further. And a lot of it has to do with just, I'm just not, it's just not for me. I'm not interested in it to begin with. But then there's also this, seems that there's this block that I just somehow, for some reason, I can't progress further than I had. Others, on the other hand, that are involved in these fields, to them it's like breathing air. It's easy for them. So medicine, not everybody is able to study medicine. Not everybody is able to study engineering. Not everybody is able to study theoretical physics. So Imam Al-Ghazali is using that to state that you look at the different fields people are involved in, and it's like they're gates that God gave openings to certain people to enter through these gates and to master that field. Now when it comes to doctors, if you're not a doctor, you go to the doctor has gone through all the education, they've attained whatever status that they've needed to attain in that field to get licensed, and then what do? You might be able to have an informed discussion with the doctor, but when it comes to the specific prescriptions and how you should conduct your life from a health perspective, you put your trust into that person, in that person's hands, because this is a person who's had that opening. Engineers, architects. I mean, people have different openings, and so we trust, even if we don't have access to that, we trust in the expertise of these people, based on accreditation, testimony of others in their field that this person is a genius. Look at Einstein, for example. Why do you believe that Einstein is a genius? I mean, you could watch all kinds of documentaries about him and be informed about it, but if you're not a theoretical physicist, if you're not a cosmologist, you don't really appreciate how much of a genius Einstein was directly. Because you don't have that direct experience with it. You don't have access to that field of knowledge if you're not someone in that field. Imam Al-Ghazali says prophets are actually the same thing. Prophets are people that have access to a particular realm, a particular field. This field happens to be revelation. And they give you prescriptions and they tell you, if you conduct your life in this way, this is how you will attain that certainty that you're looking for. When you really understand what it means to say, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but the one true God, when you understand that at an experiential level, that's when you will have the type of certainty that people like Imam Al-Ghazali, Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, some great figures said, some things are not meant to be said. Some things are beyond words. When you're talking about the divine, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْبَصِيرُ, that there is nothing like God, nothing that can come to your mind, nothing that you can comprehend is like God. In fact, it's your inability to comprehend God, that is your comprehension of God. That includes language. This is something that comes at an experiential level that goes beyond sensation. It's something that touches the soul. And only when you really get that, when you walk outside and look at creation, but you no longer see the creation, you see the Creator, this is a level of knowledge that you can only attain through engaging in the practice. But this practice cannot be routine type of practice. Prayer is not yoga. When you get engaged in ruku', in sujood, when you recite the Quran, this is not about producing sounds. It's not about just getting the tajweed right. You really have to feel what is being said and be present in heart and in mind. Now, this is not something that comes overnight. When you look at people, Imam Al-Ghazali took 10 years for him of travel and hanging out with the Sufis, the people of practice. We're not talking about, when I say Sufis, by the way, we're not talking about folkloric Sufism. We're not talking about ignorant people that go to the graves and do some, impermissible actions there or things like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people of Allah. We're talking about people who are knowledgeable in the Sharia. They understand Islam at an intellectual level, and they've applied it in their lives. It's only through, for example, just to give you kind of a, because this is a lot of abstract. Let me give you one example that just to really see what this means. You won't really understand the sanctity of human beings, the nobility of human beings. When Allah says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, you won't really get what that means until you go through a period of time of restricting yourself and stopping yourself from backbiting, slandering, lying against people, treating people badly. You have to really watch yourself and treat people as they should be treated. Treat people with the dignity that they deserve to be treated. Returning the bad with good action. When people wrong you, you do right by them. Only through time, after time of you doing this, will the spirit, the soul, the ruh of human beings manifest itself to you. And then you'll really see the sanctity, the nobility, the karama of human beings then. Only when you stop yourself from degrading, looking at people in a degraded way, and degrading them, and using them, and looking at and having them as objects in your life, only when you consciously become present with yourself and really go through, after time of doing this, your view, the way you look at people will change. And you will actually find it very difficult for you to start differentiating between people. And you will start to feel this love that the Prophet ﷺ was talking about when he said, لا يؤمن أحدكم, none of you truly believes حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه, until you love for your brother or sister what you love for yourself. And the scholars have said this is a general love to all of humanity. This is not brotherhood of Islam. This is brotherhood of humanity. Until you really see humanity as one with you, that you are no longer separate from them, that you recognize, and we're not talking about wahdat al-wujud for the aqidah people here. We're just talking about this unity in essence, that we share this something in common. Only then will you start to realize that. When you look at your friends, for example, and people that you have love for, and start to remember them before you were here. Al-arwahu junudun mujannada. The souls are like legionnaires. مَنْ تَعَارَفَ مِنْهَا ائْتَلَفَ وَمَنْ تَنَاكَرَ مِنْهَا اخْتَلَفَ. Those who got to know each other and were close with each other in the atomic realm before they came into this world, when they come into this world, you meet them, you get along right away. You feel the sense that after hanging out with them for a couple of days that you've known each other forever. That feeling, these are the souls. Now, hey, what happened? Where have you been? Been looking for each other. This is what it means to really see that sanctity of the soul and really recognize each other at a deeper level. But that only comes after you apply the external teachings, because we're talking about internal realities here. That only comes after applying the external teachings related to how you treat each other. All of a sudden you'll find the internal essence manifesting itself to you. The same thing happens with this Sharia. When you say that Islam makes sense to you, it does make sense. You will not find anything in Islam from a rational perspective, rationally speaking, pure reason-wise, that contradicts your intellect. We're not asking you to have belief in absurd propositions in Islam. Islam is, as a religion, the theology of it is very simple, it's very straightforward. It makes sense regardless whether you are a big-time philosopher or you're somebody who is unlettered, doesn't know how to read and write. Everybody can drink from this basin. So that's why it makes sense, and it resonates with the fitrah, this natural inclination of human beings towards the truth, towards that which is pure. It resonates with it. We don't have complicated, some people can complicate it, but when it comes to the essence of it, the aqeedah is very simple. So it makes sense. The modern world is confusing. The way that certain things are being given to us, the way certain propositions are being put forth, it can get confusing. But if you just navigate through all of this mess and see it for what it is, and understand a little bit of history and philosophy so that you can navigate through it, you will see right through all of this facade. But when it comes to how do I get certainty in this religion, you have to, it's like asking, How do I know that water can make me wet? That's really what you're asking. How do I know that I will get wet with water? Well, brother, you need to jump into the ocean. You need to get deep in there and start swimming. And only when you start swimming will you start to recognize, now I know what it feels like. You know, you want to know how chocolate tastes. I can describe chocolate to you all day long, but you will not feel that intense sense of pleasure from eating chocolate until you actually eat the chocolate and taste it. You will not understand what it means to be in love with somebody until you fall in love with somebody and actually give yourself to them unconditionally. That's when you really get it. People write sonnets and write poetry and write all these things. You listen to somebody like Qais ibn Mulawah, you know, أمر بالديار ديار ليلى أقبل ذا الجدار وذا الجدار وما حب الجدار شغفنا قلبي ولكن حب من سكن الديار. You know, I pass by these neighborhood alleys of Layla and I kiss the walls, but it's not the love of the walls that I'm kissing. It's not for the love of the walls, it's for the love of the one who inhabited behind these walls. You really gotta get into this and you gotta jump into it. And it cannot be routine practice. You really have to, it's better for you to pray your 5 daily prayers and not increase more than that, but to really be present in these prayers than to pray all night long and it just happened to make you tired. You know, and that takes practice. Don't expect this to happen. I mean, I guess you're 18, 19 now. This is not going to happen overnight. There are people, when you meet shuyukh that are 60, 70, 80 years old, and alhamdulillah, I had the great honor of meeting some amazing people. You see the light emanating from them. These are people that have been charging their lamps, their internal lamps, for the past 50, 60, 70 years working on it. And even then, they're still continuing to work on it. And once you take a taste of it, then you'll know. Otherwise, you'll just go around in circles and keep engaging in a lot of intellectual debates. And this is not to trash the intellect, not to say that reason is not important. It is important. But there is more to you than just your cognitive processing of proving this or proving that. You really got to get into it and do it. I hope this helps you out and anybody else that's listening. At any rate, like I said, Imam Al-Ghazali, Ibn Arabi, all of these great figures, Ibn Ata'illah al-Sakandari, they've all said the same thing. There are certain things that reality, it goes beyond words. And if you're talking about the divine, you want to experience the divine, you got to start jumping in and start swimming. Wassalamu alaikum.